Great. So I would also like to draw your attention to the fact that this webinar is the second in its series, and it is a part of the project towards a climate neutral EU, efficient allocation of EU funds. You can find more about the projects on our project website. The link I will share in the chat box now. And together with me today, I have representatives from 9 other organizations which are the part of this project, and they will present from 8 national countries, and they will present their valuable examples from different countries in Central and Eastern Europe. So if you have more questions about the project itself, about the work we are doing, so feel free to contact us after this webinar. A little bit about the agenda. So in the beginning, we will tell more about how can the use of EU funds contribute to the climate mitigation and climate adaptation. Then we will present you the best practice database, which is the result of our project's work. You will learn about what is it and how it can help us a little bit later. Then we will hear valuable examples of EU-funded projects from 8 countries in Central and Eastern European region, from Bulgaria, Czech Republic, Hungary, Latvia, Poland, Romania, Slovakia, and Slovenia. And to sum up, we will tell about some of the few possible next steps, how maybe you can contribute in our work. So without further ado, I would like to give a floor to András Lukács, who is the president of Clean Air Action Group, a Hungarian association, who will tell us how can the use of EU funds contribute to climate mitigation and adaptation. András, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Well, EU funds can contribute to climate mitigation and adaptation by financing appropriate projects, by not financing inappropriate projects, also by applying robust conditions for EU funding on national level, and by strict enforcement of these conditions. So next slide, please. So firstly, about financing appropriate projects. Of course, even if the projects are appropriate, they should be financed efficiently, without overpricing, corruption, and so on. And we know many such projects, for example, energy efficiency of buildings, better public transport, organic farming. I would just call attention to one of a very important issue, which I think receives very, very little funding in comparison with what should be needed. And this is raising awareness. I will give you just one example. Next, please. During the last 10 years, the share of the sale of SUVs in the total sale of cars quickly increased, has increased very, very quickly, and now they constitute about or nearly 50% of the new car sales. And on the right hand graph, you can see that this increase of the use.
Sorry, I have some problem in screen sharing. Just 1 minute. Sorry, András.
So meanwhile, I will continue. So this increase of the use of SUVs is the second largest cause of the increase in CO2 emissions in the world. And one of the main reasons of this, next slide, please, is the fact that car companies have been spending millions of euros on advertising SUVs. And at the same time, as far as I know, there is only one very small project with a budget of a few thousand euros, which is for promoting the purchase of small cars. So if this proportion doesn't change, it will be extremely difficult to achieve anything concerning climate protection, climate mitigation, and adaptation. So this much more funding, EU funding, should be used for public awareness raising. Next slide, please. Well, this is an issue about which we have been discussing already for many years, the financing of inappropriate projects with EU money. Here you can see just two examples of many such projects. One is a luxury hotel built with EU money. You know, if to build a hotel, you need raw materials. These hotels, luxury hotels, are generally in nature areas, so they are destroying nature. And also the main question: why do we need to finance with public money something which is used only by rich people? It means they really do not need any more financing. Another example is the enlargement of a tobacco factory, but there are many, many similar examples. So this financing of inappropriate projects must be stopped. And the conditions for EU funding should be very strict, robust, and these conditions should be first of all on national level. Namely, if the legal and institutional system of a country is, how to say it, inappropriate, then you will not succeed in implementing a good and efficient project, or it will be extremely difficult. So the conditions must be set on a national level. And what should be these conditions? Well, civil society organizations in this project and in previous projects. Here you can see the websites of the two previous projects and the current project on this topic, financed by the same sponsor. And we have prepared maybe several thousand pages of recommendations. And if this would be implemented, in our opinion, that would really create on national level in each country conditions which are appropriate for using the EU funds. Next slide, please. And of course, it is one of the main conditions, or the basic condition should be the strict enforcement of all the conditions, which means that if there is no compliance with the conditions, the EU funding must be suspended immediately. The European Commission should not wait until things really get out of control. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Andras, for your, I think, very insightful presentation. If I would like to remind attendees that if you will have any questions to Andras, you are free to use the chat box. And now I would like to call on this stage Catalina Tar, who will tell us a little bit more about our best practice database. Kati, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Alexandra. So this best practice database, it's an online database that has been created, and I'm quickly pasting the link into the chat box. So one of the goals of our project is to highlight best practices and lessons learned and widely disseminate these observations. So that's why this database has been created. In this database, we are writing a short description of these practices with some basic data like the time, the budget, and the short description. We also offer policy recommendations related to the practice. And of course, we provide the sources where the information is coming from. Any interested citizen or organization can submit examples into this database. We just started it recently. We just started to collect the examples. And our target is to have at least 250 examples by the end of the next year. And of course, this word best practice should be interpreted in a bit wider sense. We are not only looking for good examples, of course, we are focusing on them, but also on, in general, valuable examples, so also mistakes that should be avoided. Our main criteria are that the examples should be interesting, educational, valid, and constructive. So if these criteria are met, then we are really open to a big diversity of EU funding examples, just like we are a very diverse group from 8 different countries and 10 different organizations with who are focusing on different things. Somebody is more focusing on transport, others on biodiversity, etc. Basically, any measure can be submitted that has an effect on EU funding, including policies, legislations, as well as programs and projects. So that's what we are aiming at, and that's what we are inviting you as well. Also, regarding the time period, we are really open, because open from past examples through ongoing practices to even future projects via calls for tenders. Because these are also, each of them has a useful aspect. Past examples are educational, ongoing practices are really actual, and they are the real-time happenings of our world. And future tenders are still influenceable, so that's where we can still make an impact. So shortly, that's all in a nutshell about this best practice database. As I mentioned, we are still at the beginning, and soon you will hear some very interesting examples from the database. And we are looking forward to have also input from anyone interested. So also please share the word about this database. So I think I'm finishing here, and see you soon, because I will be also presenting the Hungarian examples. Thank you.
Thank you, Katya. I hope you could make our guests interested in our work, what we are actually doing. And before we jump into the actual examples of the EU fund expenditures, I would like to give an opportunity for our guests to participate in the poll. So you would have to guess the amount of the budget of European structural and investment funds for the period of 2014-2020. And the options you have is around €500,000, around €1 billion, and around €700 million. So please vote on the poll. What do you think is the correct amount? I will give a little bit more time for participants to think about it. Okay, the answers keeps coming. So thank you for your answers, and let's see the results. So most of the participants consider that the amount of the European structural investment funds for the period of 2014-2020 is around €700 million, and actually information which we were using for this poll, which is the website of the European Commission. And you from which we can learn something interesting. Let me share the screen. So, Jonas, the floor is yours.
Hello, I'm not sure whether you just interrupted in between for me, Alexander, but I couldn't hear you for a while, but now I see my slide and I hope it's okay, then I start talking. Yes, we will present 3 examples from Slovenia, and they can also be found in the best practice database that was mentioned before. The first one is connected to the previous multi-annual financial framework. It's an ongoing project that will still last until 2023. And it's run by the Slovenian Public Environmental Fund. The Slovenian Public Environmental Fund provides soft loans and small grants for households, small municipalities, small businesses since the mid-90s. However, in the current energy price crisis, and also considering the fact that we have an increasing number of energy poor households, especially in the east of the country, it is very hard to reach some segments of the population with these kind of tools, soft loans and so on. Because the extremely poor households that maybe still live in their own buildings cannot even do these investments even if they get soft loans. So here is the pilot project that is called 0500, where EcoSclat, the Public Environmental Fund, tries to find at least 500 pilot households for which they pay 100% of slightly deeper energy retrofits. What qualifies here? So this is, for example, the energy renovation of buildings with a better thermal insulation of roofs or walls. Also new windows and doors are included here, but also different sources of heating, for example, solar panels or also heat pumps. This is, I think, also an example that relates a little bit to what András said in the beginning, that awareness raising is very important, because we can see also with the tenders that were already published, and this is the second round of tendering now, it is really difficult to reach these households that might even not know about EcoSclat, let alone about their programs. So I think awareness raising is also an important part of this project that is 85% funded through cohesion funding, so that actually the targets of this funding instrument can be reached. We have 2 more examples, so now I pass over to my colleague Andrei, who's from the same organization.
Yes, hello, Andrei here. I'm going to present the cases of the wastewater treatment under the recovery facility. Perhaps something that is worth mentioning in the beginning is that for Slovenia, it's really characteristic that we have a really dispersed type of settlement, meaning we have smaller villages, and even within those settlements, there are a couple of houses on one hill, a couple on the other. And of course, this is then a very big financial strain on providing basic infrastructure. And up to date, we did not have any public support, or at least support from EU funds for wastewater treatment plants under 2,000 population units. And this has been previously a gray area where wastewater has been untreated and not processed. And finally, now with the recovery facility within the National Recovery and Resilience Plan of Slovenia, the government did provide a couple 10 million euros that will be intended for supporting these type of projects. So basically, any given municipality can apply for funding for a wastewater treatment plant under the condition that it is smaller than 2,000 population units. And given the information we have, there's quite a lot of interest from the municipalities, which is also a very good sign in terms of implementation, meaning that it's highly likely that all the funds will be utilized. And of course, what's most important, the actual effect on the ground will be better in terms of providing cleaner water that we are then releasing back into the environment. Perhaps the only thing that could provide a bit more of a financial stability is the fact that, as I said, settlements are quite dispersed in Slovenia, but perhaps more micro plants would be set up in these locations and not trying to connect the entire village that might be geographically quite dispersed, because of course that brings on higher costs during deconstruction and then later on also during the utilization of the system itself. So this could be a potential recommendation to go for more micro, smaller plants than one relatively larger for the entire settlement. On the next slide, I will be presenting the support envisioned for the transition of our businesses into green and circular economy. And here again, we're talking about an existing call from the National Recovery and Resilience Plan from Slovenia, where support for early investments into businesses is envisioned, be it new processes, be it new plants, whatever, is basically all sorts of investments in existing plants or setting up new ones is eligible. But there's quite a big problem with the fact that the environmental criteria set up in the call are quite weak. It's only marginal improvements to our opinion. We're talking about demands such as 10% increase in energy and material efficiency, whereas material efficiency is even considered to be achieved if the materials used are recyclable, which is not in all cases, but we think that it's really easy to achieve this. And looking into past surveys that have been looking into SMEs that have conducted some sort of energy efficiency measures, it turns out that most of them have achieved 10 to 20% energy efficiency improvements. Here again, we're talking about not even achieving the business as usual, but even under this, because a 10% increase is really a marginal one. And of course, here the fear is that these marginal improvements will then remain locked in for 10, 20 years to come, which is even more worrying. Another example of an inefficient practice is the past cohesion funding, past multi-annual financial framework, where again, the Ministry of Economy has provided support for SMEs in their transition to low carbon green economy. And again, the funding was earmarked specifically for the transition, for supporting the green and circular transition of SMEs. But in the end, the calls have been formed in a way that did not actually support such projects. Looking into that, roughly 10% of the projects supported were actually contributing to reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So we feel that this is really an inefficient use of funding and something that should be definitely enhanced in the future years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrei. Thank you, Wojciech. I received the messages that my connection is unfortunately unstable, so I will switch off the camera. As we could see from the presentation given from Slovenia, we could gather both examples of efficient and non-efficient spending of the EU budget, which is quite interesting. So let's jump to the Poland and let's see what is the situation there. So I would like to give a floor for the Wojciech Szymanski from Institute for Sustainable Development.
Thank you very much. I would like to highlight just one example, but I think it's a highly valuable example for all of us, and especially for Poland. As you see the maps now that are on the screen, you can see that the network of railway in Poland has substantially diminished since 1988. So, and even shortly after the accession of Poland to EU, some lines were still being closed and liquidated on the ground. So the map on the right hand presents the current state of the art, where you have substantially less railway lines in Poland, and this situation is very bad to sustainable transport, because it of course resulted in at the same time much more travel by car and much more transport by heavy lorries through Poland. And so I would like to present one of the very good examples of the revitalization of the railway line that was almost closed. So please, next slide. Thank you. So this is an example of a quite old modernization of a railway line, in a sense that it was realized in 2011 and 2013. And it was financed from the regional operational program for Greater Poland. This is a railway line that connects Poznań, that you probably know. This is one of the biggest cities in Poland. And some smaller city, Wągrowiec, but of course on the line there were a few smaller cities as well. So this is a little bit a metropolitan railway, but it also goes farther into the region. And what was the quite immediate result of this modernization was the shortened time of travel by 25 minutes. And this gave a very big jump in the number of passengers, but it's on the next slide. But overall result of that was that this railway line before the modernization was really one of the last railway lines that had very few trains and very few passengers. As a result, at the end, this is the railway line when it's the second most used railway line in this region at all. What has happened? And what caused this result? Please, next slide. And so the revitalization gave way to the rising number of passengers, and it is more than 50% now. I couldn't reach to the certain numbers, but before we put this example into the best practice database, I will try to make it. And this led to, as it was realized that the number of passengers is rising, it of course led to less car traffic to Poznań from this part of the region. And this is also visible through the fact that many people that previously were going to Poznań are now using park and ride, are using parkings first that were surrounding the stations, but then they were rebuilt into the park and ride facilities, also from the EU funding. Then the number of trains was rising, and now each train runs every half an hour, and before there were less than 1 hour. And also this led to the purchase of new trains that are more efficient, and that also give space to more trains on this line. Then at the end, this resulted in the opening of a train service point in Wągrowiec. There was also a modernization of railway station, which was awarded the best railway station in 2018 in Poland. It was also partly from the EU funding. And there are also plans to modernize this line, which is it ends right now at the border of the Greater Poland region, and it leads farther to Bydgoszcz, to the region that is in the neighborhood of Greater Poland, that is Kujawsko-Pomorskie. But in this other region, the railway now is totally closed. No trains are going there, but there are plans to revitalize that, and this is the result of the first modernization in 2011-2015 of the railway line to Wągrowiec. So please, next slide, the last one. So the recommendation from this, a very good example of the revitalization of the railway line is that all new railway modernizations should be a part of revitalization, should be a part of a packet it's not only modernize the railway, so the infrastructure when the trains are going, but it should also lead to the renewal of trains, of stations, or all the surrounding communication and facilities. And especially in this period, because this railway line that I showed is a diesel railway line. So all of these developments, of course, despite of the fact that this is a diesel railway line, all of these developments probably brought quite substantial minimalization of the emission of CO2, because public transport is at all less emitting than cars. But this new modernization should put more effort to electrify the railway lines. And Polish regions should be more bold to modernize railway lines, even though they are closed now, even though there might be not enough trains. I mean, little number of trains, maybe not enough, but little number of trains. They should put more money. But you see that in Poland right now, only 3 regions are proposing. So this is this yellow part of the financing of the railway in Polish regions. Only 3 regions are planning to modernize railway lines. This is a bad development. I think that this example shows that Polish regions can do much more and be more into railway development. Thank you.
Thank you, Wojciech. That was a very interesting example of the development of the railway in Poland. And we actually have a question for you from one of our attendees. So the question came from Gabriela Nanch, and it states, "Dear Wojciech, could you please identify on which stage of the strategic plans missing the phase of revitalization of the railway lines? What are the barriers to become this good practice a general process?"
Yes, thank you for this question. I think the problem is a little bit a problem of the matter who is ruling the railways in Poland, and I assume that in most of the countries in Central and Eastern Europe, it's the national company or a national administration that administrates all the railway lines, and from their point of view, they make usually national analysis of transit of the bigger trains, and they see that the smaller lines are not profitable to them because they do not carry big transport, big volume of the cargo, or they only carry the small regional trains. But from the point of view, when we divide this into regions, when we look into the local development and make analysis on a local basis, as it was here in this region, because it was the regional operational program. So the analysis to prepare this modernization were made on the regional level, and also there's a regional company that runs the trains on this railway. The view is totally different. We see that even the railway lines that from the national point of view is very small and not profitable. From the regional point of view, it can be very good railway line, and it should be maintained, and it should be rebuilt, and it should be and more emphasis should be given to the modernization. And I think this is the biggest problem in Poland, that this view from the national and regional or even local situation is totally different.
Thank you, Wojciech. At least for me, I think it was a very clear answer.
Thank you.
So now let's jump to Bulgaria and see some valuable examples from there. So I would like to give a floor to Petko Kovacev from Economic Policy Institute.
Hello to everyone. With our colleagues, we assessed several potential projects and decided to present 3 of potentially good projects from the National Recovery and Resilience Plan, because the operational programs for the current period are not yet prepared, and the ones from the previous period are not yet finished. So assessment was not easy. So the first project is for support for renewable energy for households with two different measures: installing of solar systems for domestic hot water supply and installation of PV systems of up to 10 kilowatt peak, including electricity storage for the ones who want to add to the project. The intention is to finance and to support at least 10,000 households with mainly inefficient solid fuel heat services up to now. And also it is possible for energy poor families to apply for 100% of support for both hot water supply or PVs. The risk here is that Bulgaria still do not have energy poverty definition. So this is one of the obstacles that should be soon dealt with in order to speed up this project. We believe this could be one of the best projects of the National Recovery and Resilience Plan if properly executed and of course finalized in time. The next slide, please. The second project we select to present is so-called RESTORE, or Developmental National Infrastructure for Electricity Storage from Renewables. Now there is a boom of applications for renewable investments in Bulgaria, but there is no yet storage systems. This is one of the two projects aiming to develop such a storage infrastructure, with aim to commission national infrastructure of grid scale storage facilities with 6,000 megawatt hours of usable energy capacity. For Bulgaria, this is quite a lot as a potential energy capacity, and the facilities would consist all of the technologies needed and will be distributed around the territory of the country and located near renewable generating capacities in order to serve for the whole national grid. And the third one, please. This is one of the most important projects. It is aiming to invest in improvement of the work and assets of electricity system operator, so-called ESO. It's digital transformation of the whole electricity transmission grid. The national operator is now probably the most important institution from technical side of the transformation to green energy. It is important to know that, as in all other countries, Bulgarian transmission grid is based on a big scale generation capacities and has limitations to incorporated renewables, especially small scale renewables. So such digital transformation is very much needed. With number of sub-projects, the physical aims of the projects are that by the end of March 2026, the transmission grid could be possible to integrate a new 4,500 megawatts of production capacity from the renewables. And by the end of June to 2025, a cumulative 1,200 megawatts of additional net interconnection capacities with Romania and Greece. Unfortunately, we should mention several possible risks for these projects, starting with bad procurement practices in Bulgaria that may prolong procedures and implementation time, and thus making possible to integrate less capacities, both in renewables and interconnection. The other risk is that there are already applications for more than 10,000 megawatts of new PVs, which means that the goal of only 4,500 megawatts is already inadequate, and real demand for network capacity is a few times bigger. This should be properly addressed as well, both by the policy decision makers and by ESO. And unfortunately, high level of corruption is also a huge potential risk, as it was reported in media several times that system operator was also a subject of such practices so far. So we expect not only these three, but few other projects in the plan to become good examples by 2025, 2026. And let's be optimistic, but we'll keep eye on all of this. Thank you very much.
Thank you a lot, Petko. Indeed, risks in the project is something always to consider. Let's hope that in these three examples, the implementation will go as planned. So the last speaker in this block will come from Slovakia. So I would like to invite Dana Marekova from Slatinga Association to present also some interesting and valuable examples.
Hello, everybody. I will present three examples which are very different indeed also when it comes to or the EU funding that are supposed to be funding these measures or in fact reforms in some cases. With the first one, that's still kind of a vision and wishful thinking, but because it's already included in our National Energy and Climate Plan, we are hoping that this will be something that will, and it's also included in the operational program draft for the new period, and that's the regional energy centers. Now, what it really means, it's a rather key systematic measure addressing a chronic problem in Slovakia. And I would like to kind of tie to what Andras was mentioning, and also I think one of the examples from Slovenia, that in Slovakia, we do see bad projects or projects that are funded by EU funding, but really not complying with rules or even sometimes laws of the country or EU. And then we also see those that are, or on a larger scale, in fact, we see that the rules are so poorly set up, they're so bureaucratic and so administratively difficult to comply with, that there is a really big underspending of EU funds. So these regional energy centers are actually built on this experience, and they're supposed to actually create a system of energy governance on a regional level. So they would do energy planning, they would help with EU funds use, and they would look at how to optimize energy needs and consumption in a particular region, really assessing the situation in the region. So indeed, the benefits that we see are so vastly needed now is that the energy efficiency or renewable energy systems would increase because it would be really focused on the needs of the regions. Centers would have a function to coordinate, monitor, analyze, and guide also the guidance of the implementation of the projects is something that that would be vested in these centers. We have high hopes because Ministry of Economy, that's usually opponent to progressive ideas, is backing this this systemic proposal, systemic measure up. So let's see, this is something that should be funded from the next operation program in the next period. Next slide, please. Can I have next slide, please? Oh, okay. So the next one is actually a measure that's been included in National Resilience and Recovery Plan. And it's kind of tackled in the larger measure that's development of low carbon transport infrastructure. The total amount here for this line is 700 million, but I will be talking about 100 million out of these 700, which is deemed to boost cyclotransportation. It is, we are working within a larger coalition of NGOs, and this particular measure was introduced by the Cycle Coalition, which is very active in this field, and they succeeded to actually lobby through during the preparation of the NRRP this measure, which was rather successful, but it is yet to be seen how successful it will be in the implementation phase. So at this point, NRRP includes 100 million, which is calculated about 1/3 of the amount really needed to build a good network of cyclopaths throughout Slovakia in municipalities to really switch the mobility system from the prevailing car use to bicycles and other forms of transportation, public transportation. So it is a chunk, a relatively large chunk that is needed, but as I was mentioning, there are conditions for success. So kind of lessons learned from the past, how the cyclopaths need to be built, must be introduced in the implementation of the Resilience Recovery Plan in order for this 100 million euro to be spent well. So we need a clear strategy in each and every municipality how this will be spent, not just pouring a concrete and building cyclopaths. We definitely need some adjustment to legislation and technical standards. And above all, again, we need to increase capacities both on the municipal as well as national level. Another kind of systemic issue that's that's a requirement for this money to be well spent is to use good data analysis related to mobility. It's not really difficult to do, but again, in order to avoid building cyclopaths where they're not needed and they will not help to improve the mobility, you need to have a good data and good analysis of this data, connecting the cyclopaths to public transportation, railways, and so on. So we will see about this one. And the last one, at this point, it's considered one of the biggest success. It's linked with the house renovation. The house renovation is something it's talked over and over in all EU, and you know, it comes with a repower as kind of lower hanging fruit as well. So in Slovakia, finally, a lot of the support for gas boilers is, you know, being luckily abandoned. And we see that the new schemes are kind of the incentive programs are more and more really geared for alternatives. The current program is called Green Light for Households. And it is funded from the currently running operation program since 2015. 76 million has been spent for installment of about 36,000 renewable sources in different households. What is interesting is that especially after the situation and horrible war in Ukraine, we see such huge interest in really renewable sources that the last call for projects that was about worth 15 million euro total. It will be funding 5,000 households which requested this support, the vast majority for heat pumps. And this call was closed within 11 minutes because no money was left. So clearly people are getting ready for winter. They are ready to switch from unsustainable sources to something different. And therefore we were really quite busy pushing good incentive programs for houses, for renovation, as well as installment of renewables, both in the new operation program as well as NRRP. With regards to the new operation program that is expected to have 100 million euro for renewables. But what is even more worth mentioning is that National Resilience Recovery Plan has allocation of more than 528 million euro for 300,000 houses, 30,000 houses. And this should be so-called all-in-one, so combination of deep renovation, energy efficiency increase, and renewables. This program was really quite carefully fine-tuned and continues to be so. Recently, we were glad to see that there were other measures that are included, such as, for example, green roofs. So it's really kind of renovation all in one. And also, the vulnerable groups gained priority. I think Petko was mentioning that energy poverty is still missing in Romania, so is in Slovakia. But this program kind of managed to set up at least essential, kind of identify essential groups and so on. So let's see how the implementation will be. But we're happy to see that the lessons have indeed been incorporated here. The lessons there where we really need more and of such programs, such incentive programs for houses, really not bureaucratic, so easier spending and including deep renovation. And of course, the focus on an adjustment for vulnerable groups, as I was mentioning. So these are the 3 examples from Slovakia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dana. Very interesting situations from 3 totally different sectors. And now I would like to switch our attention a little bit to the questions. And so far we have 1 open question in the Q&A session box. So this question is more allocated to those who experienced any misuse of EU funds in their respective countries. So what available tools and processes does civil society have to report or step up against any misuse of funds? And then what legal formal steps can the EU take to address such reported misuse? So speakers who just presented now, if you have any valuable insights you would like to mention more, the floor is yours and open for your comments. Dana, Petko, Jonas, Andrei, Wojciech.
I've included some comments from Slovakia, so I don't know if I should elaborate more on them. The one is more from the past experience, and I included also some of the tools that we're using these days but I think that Hungarian examples are even more vivid. So András, I see your hand already, so. I'll leave it up to you.
Yes, thank you. Well, this is a difficult issue because if the national institutional and legislative system are not correct, then the EU can do very little. But there is Olaf, which should control, but there are several problems with Olaf. First of all, Olaf has very little capacity, so they just control a very small percentage, maybe 1% of, or no, even no, I think maybe 0.1% of the projects. And if they, even if they find something that is not, that there is a misuse of EU funds, they can do two things. First, to report to the national authorities, but for example, in Hungary, the national authorities very often do not deal with these issues, especially if those concerned have close political connections, high-level political connections. And the other thing which the Olaf can do is to report to ask the European Commission to request the repayment of the funding. But then what happens? Let's say the money is repaid by the national government, but the national government can use this money for some other projects. So the criminals who stole the money, for example, will be happy with this money and nothing happens. So, and there is also another problem that Olaf can only investigate concrete projects, but if there is a problem with the national legislation, with the national anti-corruption framework and so on, or even if there is no corruption, but just the project is implemented according to the rules, but it is clearly an inefficient project, there are much better projects, then Olaf cannot do anything. So the whole system of EU funding and the rules must be changed. There are good general rules. For example, according to the financial regulation, the projects must be efficient, highly efficient, but what does it mean in practice? It's a big question. So yes, it's a enormous problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Andres. I see Petko also have a raised hand.
Yes, thank you, Alexandra. Of course, I fully agree with what Andres says about the inefficient whole EU rules for the EU funding. But as we are talking about efficiency from the side of climate policy and environmental protection policy, I'd like to point out that we don't see yet good results from these climate targets and climate indicators that should be in all structural and cohesion funding for by 2021, the last period. So my point is that we should focus, I mean, as a civil society, not only our groups, of course, on pushing both national governments and the commission to scrutinize more and more climate goals of both structural and cohesion funding, national plans for and even just transition facility, because some of preliminary information from Bulgaria also shows that climate indicators are not put on the top. So this is an area that in which we should go further as a civil society groups if we would like to get more efficient projects from all EU funding. Thank you.
Thank you, Petko. Very valuable insight, I think. So I would like you to have a little rest and also to participate in another poll. So the question now is, in which sector do you think EU funds have had the best effect on environment and climate in Central and Eastern Europe? Please select maximum 3 choices, and the options are food and agriculture, transport, environmental protection, health, education, energy, tourism, or culture. I would like to give a few minutes for our attendees to vote. And let's see what can be the results. Okay, thank you for your voting. And let's see the results. So most of our participants think that in the sectors of transport and environmental protection, EU funds have had the best effect on environment and climate in Central and Eastern region, and the least targeted sector were culture and tourism. Thank you very much for your voting. And now we will move to the next block of our presenters. So I would like to invite on this floor now Hunor Lediel from Romania, from Focus Eco Center, to share with us some interesting examples from his country of EU-funded projects. Hunor, are you with us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity on behalf of the Focus Eco Center. For Romania, as an overview, I can say that we assessed a total of 13 cases on the following thematic areas: forestry 1, biodiversity 5, education 1, energy efficiency 1, tourism 1, transport 3, and waste management 1. We tried to pick cases from as diverse as possible fields. The geographic area of these is some of them are local, so connected to a city, some of them are regional, cross-county like, and some of them are national. The education one was a national project concerning sustainable development education for children in less developed areas. And to present from the 3 examples, the first would be coming from the thematic area of biodiversity protection, specifically the conservation status of bisons. And in one national park in the northeast of the country, the Vânător-Neamț National Park. So this area of this project is a regional one. The duration of the implementation of the project was between 2007 and 2013. It had a budget of 200,000 euros, of which the source was the European Regional Development Fund and the Cohesion Fund, channeled through the operational program environment in the respective years. And the achieved goals of the project were assuring the conservation of the bison, which is a very emblematic species for us because it was driven to extinction. And in the last about 50 years, they are trying to repopulate bisons in the Carpathians. And one of the projects for these conservation efforts is the one in the Vânător-Neamț National Park. a species that besides being emblematic, it's also an umbrella species for the national park. Another achieved goal of the project was the elaboration of a management model for the park, because it was a very big chronicle issue 15, 20 years ago that our national parks didn't had a good management strategy. And thanks to these European funds, a lot of national parks managed to put together a good plan for the duration of the project, but also with long-term goals after the ending of the project. And besides the conservation efforts and the elaboration of a management strategy, another side result, as we can call it, was the building of a successful brand for the national park, of course, focused on the bison and also on infrastructure. On the lower image, you can see there a walkway, which is at the canopy level of the trees. And you can walk up there and the bisons are glazing down at your feet. So this was one of the examples. The second example is from the transport domain. It's a small project, but a very representative one. It was implemented in the center of the country in Sibiu city, which is a medieval, very touristical city. The thematic area is transport, the geographic area is local, it's a city. The duration of the project was between 2017 and 21. It had a budget of 11.5 million euros, of which almost 70% were gathered from the European Regional Development Fund. And the achieved goals were, it was the first case in Romania where in the city center they used minibuses, electrically powered minibuses. And it is very well thought that these buses are mini because these medieval cities have very tight corners and very small streets. So the minibuses are ideal for them. At the launch of the line, it had 13 stops, but after it was very successful, they extended it to a 22-stop line. So they went out of the city center and also accessed an area of the city which didn't have before that bus coverage. And also the achieved goal is that thanks to this European fund, the Council of the city could follow their sustainable urban mobility plan for 2016-2013. And besides these electric buses, there is an implementation now to buy other low emission buses. And overall, with the introduction of these buses, they managed to create a line of transport without emissions, without sound pollution for the residents, and to create an alternative transport for residents living there, and overall to get a good, better city image for Sibiu, which is like a flagship city, at least by touristical standards for the country. And the last example is coming from the domain of waste management and from the north of the country, from Baia Mare municipality. It's management of biodegradable wastes in the city, wastes that are produced anyway because these are wastes coming from the green spaces of the city. The duration was between 2013-2015, and it was a very interesting project because it was funded by the ENPI, ENI, or the European Neighborhood Partnership instrument. And this means that the partner cities were from Ukraine. More specifically, they were from Ivano-Frankivsk and Kolomia. And the total budget for the project was 440,000 euros, of which 90% was sourced by the EU, and the 5% were from the Romanian government and 5% were from Baia Mare city. Baia Mare got from this project about 220,000 euros, 100,000 euros were spent in Ukraine on the two cities. And the overall achieved goals for Baia Mare were the creation of a recycling biodegradable waste management plant. Machines were acquired, machines for the wood chipping, for the aeration of the prisms, and a rotary sieving machine for the sieving of the material. And also a very important aspect was the hiring of staff. A total of 8 new jobs were created with these projects. And so these are 3 examples. And as I said in the first webinar also, I think that EU funds are essential in Romania for environmental and conservational efforts. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Hunar. Especially the third example drew my attention. Because as you said, it was a transnational project. So I would like to ask you a question. Did you have an opportunity to follow up what happened after all with this infrastructure of biodegradable waste in Baia Mare municipality? Is it still functioning?
Yes, as I know, it is still functioning. I don't know in the Ukraine situation, what is it with those?
Okay, great. That's wonderful to hear. Thank you very much. Now let's jump to Latvia. And from Krista Peterson from Green Liberty, we would like to hear some interesting facts about Latvian system.
Yes, hello, good afternoon. Very nice to meet you all. And I've heard already many really inspiring cases from other countries. So today I would like to present one case which is somehow at least exceptional for our EU funds and also decarbonization efforts in the context of climate and energy policy. So I think that at this time, the biggest concern for most people is about energy prices, and not only energy prices, but how the energy is somehow delivered to our homes, since it is for heating and also hot water that we mostly spend about 80% of energy, or energy consumptions for household is about 80% for heating and of the premises and hot water alone. And of course, there are many challenges with reforming or transforming the existing heating systems, not only in terms of energy generation, but also the efficiency measures in the households themselves. So today I'd like to present one project which was finished in 2019, and it has also won several prizes because it somehow put together 2 sides which maybe were complementary, that the project was innovative itself. So this now is the largest thermal district heating park in the Baltics, but it also was very well positioned in the ongoing processes concerning the district heating systems in Latvia, and let's say this contrasting maybe movement or change, that there are more clients who still prefer to have individual heating systems, but often for sustainability concerns, we would need to somehow incentivize more connections to the district heating system. So this project was about installing 1,700 solar thermal collectors in Salisbury, and then they were connected to the district heating system. Also, the project involved installation of accumulation tank, and also there was a new boiler built replacing somehow gas sources. So in that sense, the hot water consumption is mainly granted by solar energy. And this was somehow the first step, because the enterprise itself, it focuses on other efficiency measures in the housing sector, but also it recently extended its interest in solar energy by installing a new plant of solar PV for electricity generation. And this project has somehow also been interesting for these purposes, but it took somehow a different trajectory than most of other projects within the program measures and objectives dedicated to decarbonizing heating systems. So in the previous period, there has been an increase in the role of forest biomass in the district heating system, and this was mostly driven by EU funds. Of course, this let's say movement or this change has helped to phase out some fossil fuel generation, mainly, of course, natural gas. However, there are always these sustainability concerns when we consider long-term scenarios. So the increase in the biomass, the share of biomass in the heating systems, it has been achieved by the help of EU funds. So it has a good side and it has also this kind of bad side. And therefore we are really looking for projects who would appropriate other perhaps zero emission technologies such as solar energy or heat pumps preferably. And yeah, I think that this until now is the only project, but we are looking forward to the new planning period. And currently the most recent calls were, let's say, posted more in an emergency approach, because there are many municipalities who look for opportunities to replace the gas boilers with biomass, just to somehow avoid the big hit coming from energy prices. So next slide, please. And yes, and I guess that these investments in heating systems are very much connected to renovation or efficiency issues, because of course this also hopes to use EU funds for faster decarbonization and transition to 100% renewable energy are possible only if the overall consumption goes down. And then of course it has been challenging, or it's still challenging for most European countries, but then to increase the rate of energy efficiency, it has not been easy. And then there are always governance, participation, and funding barriers. So this new project program for housing renovation that we are looking forward to, maybe somehow more optimistically, but also maybe very carefully, will have about 230 million euros available. But the big challenge is how to, let's say, standardize the individual projects so that the let's say the renovation pace is faster, and moreover, so that also some innovative technologies such as renewables or other installments are possible. And currently there are still, let's say, informational campaigns somehow trying to motivate more citizens to get enrolled. However, more fundamental changes in let's say rules for arranging the decision making and also standardizing the individual projects are about to come. But however, there are many risks, and one of them, of course, is increasing prices. So unfortunately, EU funds will definitely be not enough to, let's say, to grant the transition to more energy efficient housing on a large scale. However, I think that this new program will be a transition to more innovative, perhaps, projects that have more identity for themselves. So thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Krista. Very interesting insights, very interesting projects. Let's hope all of them will be implemented as it was planned. Let's move on to Czech Republic and see some interesting example from Eva Marinicová from Center for Transport and Energy.
Yes, thank you. So there's obviously plenty of interesting programs and projects that we can talk about. There's one particularly that I would like to highlight and dedicate most of my time in the presentation today, and I will also briefly touch upon another one that is also financed by the NRRP. So this is the new Green for Savings program. It's probably the most comprehensive and most effective program focusing on energy savings in family houses and residential buildings. Just a bit of a brief history. It was already founded in some sort of modification in 2009, and at the time it was under a different name, and also was financed from the sale of tradable units under the Kyoto Protocol. But basically, the aim was to support the installation of heating systems using renewable energy sources. The support or the interest from the population was enormous. So very fast, the acceptance of application was closed, but it didn't took that long. And the program was relaunched again, this time under a new name. Initially, it was supposed to focus mainly on only for the owners of detached houses. Also, the scope was much broader than in case of Green Savings Program because it was possible also to get financing for the replacement of solid fuel boilers, gas boilers, salt water heating systems, as well as biomass stoves. The new Green for Savings program, as titled now, was financed by proceeds from auctioning of EU emission allowances. You can see on the slide here that the program did not stop. It gradually evolved in another program, or like there's a continuation basically for another 10 years. You can see on the slide that it will be again financed by the EU money this time, partially from the National Recovery and Resilience Plan, as well as from the EU allowances from the years 2026. If we can go to the next slide now. Thank you. Basically on this picture, in these pictures, you can see what is the core focus on this program. As I mentioned, it's the energy consumption of residential buildings. You can get finance, you can get subsidies for a construction or purchase of a house with a very low energy consumption. More environmentally friendly heating methods are being supported, as you can see on the picture as well. And obviously very popular are photovoltaic panels being installed on houses. So that's something that, like I said, the scope is very broad. If we go to the next slide. Here you can see when I talk about how nation spread and nationwide it is, this is what I mean by that. You can see that there's probably another place in the country that has not benefited from this program. I only have data for the years 2014 to 2021, but we're talking 74,000 beneficiaries, and it's quite a significant money as well. Can we go to the next slide? For the upcoming period, for the 10 years that is ahead of us, like I mentioned before, part of the money is financed by the National Recovery and Resilience Plan. You can see it's quite interesting, the overall allocation of the money. You can see that the most of the money will be going to the renovation and construction of family and apartment buildings. Okay, that's it for this slide. Can we go to the next one? If I have to summarize this program and give a bit of a critical analysis, which I think it's important also from the aspect of environmental and climate, I would say that it helped very much with the energy savings and transition to low carbon energy and economy. The positive aspect of this program is that it's for sure very well known. I mean, in Czechia, as well as in other CE member states, because the EU money were being misused and subsidies going to large companies. EU funding has had in the past quite a negative reputation among the population. What we can say for sure about this program is that it's very popular and it's very well known. I mean, it has a very popular and positive connotation. So that's something that is for sure a positive aspect. Another point is that in the past, it was possible to get financed fossil fuel projects, which we've criticized in the past and we've seen as the biggest issue with this program. This has changed in April 2022 when the support for gas boilers was stopped. I mean, the gas boilers were not being able to get financing from this program anymore. This was obviously due to the situation, war in Ukraine and Russian aggression and the whole conversation about energy dependency. Going with this is my last point. Is actually there's obviously like room for improvement. We see that there's lots of families that are now in the threat of energy, poverty. So I think scoping or broadening a bit the program and filling more and putting more money in there is for sure a great step forward. So we hope that the government will make actions in this particular area. And lastly, I only wanted to also mention that there are other interesting projects as well, especially in the recovery and resilience facility. I picked this particular one from a different, let's say, from a different theme or a different area of interest, and that's the electrification of railways. You can see that the total amount of money is roughly around 2,272 million euros. The financings have already started and it's expected to run up to mid-2024, and will be obviously critically evaluating the environmental and climate aspects, but so far it looks promising and positive, and we're hoping for the best. So with this, that's the end of my presentation, and if you have any more questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Ever. I'm honestly impressed by the first project you presented. I think 74,000 of participants on this project is quite a result. But my main question will be related as a source of funding. You mentioned that in general, EU funds have quite a bad reputation in Czech Republic. However, I see that the proper implementation of them can gain quite a popularity. So do you think that this project of electrification of the households can be more developed based on the national funds too?
I hope so. I mean, the whole conversation about the EU funds I see is changing in Czechia. I hope in other CE member states as well. I think we're going with the right direction. I'm hoping that with the upcoming programming period, the more money going in the renewables, energy sources, and more to the smaller businesses and people, it can make an actual difference. And so, yeah, I really hope it will be the case.
And does the government have similar plans already, or is just something which is discussed and not on the paper yet?
Well, for the programming period, the PA and operation documents are being finalized and basically being very soon approved by the Commission. So there's plenty of interesting projects, and more calls will be actually opening this summer. So there's hopefully soon we'll be hearing more about that, but there's some exciting projects coming up.
And thank you, Eva. And another question is coming actually from one of our speakers. So how many railways should be electrified in Czech Republic with the program? I guess we're talking about the second project you presented. So is it going to be 100% network?
I'm not really sure about the precise number. I would yeah, I cannot really give you an exact number. I'm hoping it will be a substantial like amount that will actually make a difference. But yeah, I don't really have the exact number right now. I mean, the whole program is still a bit blurred. We'll see. I mean, once it's being evaluated, we will for sure know what will the outcomes will be. So
thank you, Eva. Thank you very much for your presentation and for your answers. Now let's move on to the last country, which to our last presenter, Katalin. She will show us some interesting examples and about the overall situation in Hungary on the EU fund expenditure.
Yeah, thank you, Alexandra, and hello again. So I will present 3 examples from Hungary. The first one is a LIFE project. It is called LIFE, Municipalities as Integrators and Coordinators in Adaptation to Climate Change. It will be really a best practice, a really good practice. It has a small budget, like most LIFE projects. It has about 2.5 million euros with 60% of EU funding. And this project established ecosystem-based natural water retention measures. For example, you can see on the picture to the right side, this little lake, it used to be a clay pit. So a place from where people extracted clay for centuries. And then during the 20th century, it was closed down, it was empty. And now they use it as a water retention temporary lake. These similar water retention developments are important in climate mitigation. Sorry, I wanted to say climate adaptation and increasing the resilience of these municipalities. 5 pilot projects were implemented in small rural municipalities, and the cost effectiveness and long-term economic sustainability was focused already at the planning phase of these nature-based development, and also local municipalities were key actors already at the planning stage. So local people, the public was involved, their opinion was heard, and they really contributed to the end products. So we can say that this is a good practice for EU funds, for EU money spending, and this should be upscaled in Hungary and probably in Europe as well. And the sad thing is that such a practice, this example is an exception compared to the trends which are oversized, hard engineering solutions as opposed to nature-based solutions, usually financially unsustainable and financially unsustainable projects, which are a few years after their constructions, they are just left there without money for maintenance. Usually these most EU projects are centrally distributed developments without much public hearings, and regarding the water, the wetlands and lakes, and in general the natural conditions in Hungary, deterioration is the common tendency currently in Hungary. Huge hotel developments, tourism developments, industrial developments are going on instead of small-scale nature-based solutions. And also regarding water management, actually, if we look at the numbers, the facts, still the conservative water management practices are dominant, which is basically drainage, the drainage of water, building channels just to drain water away. while now and in the future, especially, water maintenance will be a key task for us. So thank you. You can please go to the next slide. The second example that I would like to present to you is very similar to some of which my colleagues have also presented from the Czech Republic, Slovakia, Latvia. So residential photovoltaic systems and heating electrification. This project has quite a big budget, more than $500 million, 80% of which is from EU funding. This project is planned to be funded from the current RRF budget. However, as a side note, this hasn't been approved yet, so this money is still pending for Hungary. 45,000 households are targeted by this project, and it includes the installation of photovoltaic panels and photovoltaics combined with heating electrification. I must add that there are no energy efficiency measures included in this project, so there are no energy efficiency criteria or no renovation activities are supported by this project. The only requirement is a financial one, that the income should be lower or equal than the mean per capita annual income. So that's the only requirement. Can you please go to the next slide? So we can interpret this project as a glass half full or half empty. It is half full because increasing the share of renewable energy is a positive thing. That's something that we definitely need to achieve the European Green Deal goals and carbon neutrality. However, and in my opinion, it is mostly half empty because first of all, without energy efficiency, this project is a waste of resources and energy because Hungarian households, more than half of them are in need of deep renovation. Their energy efficiency level is around F category, if I remember correctly. So without the deep renovation of these houses, it is simply a waste of resources to put photovoltaics and heat pumps on such houses and heat them with electricity. Overall, on top of that, if that happens with the extra electricity demand, also it's a huge overload for the grid capacities, for the electric grid, and mostly poor people live in these really bad or in these houses with really low energy efficiency levels. And that's the other point. Energy poverty is not really addressed in this program. There's some intention, and it is mentioned that the project tried to target energy poverty, people in energy poverty. However, if you look at the criteria, having the salary or the income of less or equal to the medium, to the average income, actually it's too favorable. Even affluent people can get 100% funding for their photovoltaics, and people with the average income, according to the market experiences, they can offer from their own salaries to install photovoltaics, or they would be happy with a 50% discount, or just some loans with some loans with, for example, zero interest rate, or different benefits. So this is too favorable, and actually not the energy poor people will benefit from this project. And also the impact of the boom of applications will raise prices, and they will hold capacity of, for example, of manpower and technical resources. So in the end, people who are really in need, they will not be able to benefit from this project. You can please go to the next slide. Thank you. And my final example is a big mistake to avoid. It is a European Investment Bank loan which was provided for a large, massive airport development of Budapest Airport without an environmental impact assessment and without public consultations. The budget was almost €500,000, but this is a loan, so it's not just free money, but still it's a loan of very good conditions, and it's a loan using EU money. 43%, almost half of this loan was funded by the European Investment Bank. The start of this project was in 2018, and according to the forecast, there would be a 50% increase in the air traffic by 2030. And in spite of that, no environmental impact assessment had to be carried out. So basically the project didn't address the increased greenhouse gas emissions, the impact on air pollution, noise pollution, on the market value of neighboring homes. As you can see on this, maybe you can't see it very well, but in the center, there's the airport on the picture, and around there are residential areas all around it. And on top of that, the project was divided into sub-projects. So because of that, the cumulative impact of the sub-project was not considered. So the scope of the whole development didn't hit the threshold of getting certain permits. And also these sub-projects were all approved in advance by the authorities. So everything, all the papers, all the permits were already in the pockets of the developers. Can you go to the next slide, please? Luckily, in 2020, some Hungarian NGOs issued a complaint to the European Investment Bank, and the European Investment Bank started an investigation, a compliance review, and they found out that actually when they provided this loan to the airport development, they failed to assess the climate, noise, and air pollution impact of this project, and also failed to involve local stakeholders in public consultations. So EIB actually found out that there has been huge mistake, and European rules and regulations were not respected. And on top of that, as an NGO, we have to conclude that it is simply unacceptable to finance from European money such a polluting industry as an airport development. The polluter pays principle should be really enforced, and such developments should be financed only from private funds, if there should be such investments anyway. And also the division of a de facto huge project into smaller ones should be prohibited, and because that could lead to the avoidance of an environmental impact assessment or any other legislative requirements or permits can be avoided because of this playing with the size of a project. So these were my 3 examples from Hungary. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Kati. Very, very interesting projects, especially the one about Budapest Airport. And now let's take some time for answering the questions from our attendees. So the first question is about the household energy efficiency project. So how much of the households are involved to these projects? What is the total efficiency of all households together? Are these statistics published about the whole country's households' energy efficiency development caused by these projects? So, dear speakers, I would like to hear your insights on this question. Petko, you have a raised hand.
Thank you. Unfortunately, in Bulgaria, we have quite bad examples with statistics. While the country spent more than 1 billion euros national budget money plus several 100,000 from other sources. Still, the good nationally recognized and proved statistics on this doesn't exist. And this is one of the issues our colleagues that are working in energy efficiency field are continuously fighting for. Probably, I also would like to hear good examples if there are such, but probably we need to ask not only the efficiency as percentage or whatsoever estimations, but ask for physical measurement of the results, especially emissions decreasing, because otherwise presentations sometimes shows completely unreliable and fake figures, overestimating every meaningful estimation. So I think this is really good and important question to follow with recovery and resilience plans, where we have much more money for efficiency as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Petko. I don't see any other raised hands from our speakers. Anybody else would like to take this question? Okay, then I would like also to give a minute of rest to our attendees and also to vote on the next poll, which we are interested to have your insight in. So you have heard different presentations from different countries about different best practices. So which country presentation contained the best practice? Which country uses EU funds in the best way based on their presentation? What do you think? Is it Poland, Slovenia, Slovakia, Czechia, Romania, Lithuania, Bulgaria, or Hungary? I would like to give you some time to vote on the poll. And also, while we are proceeding with the voting, there was another question in the Q&A session box. So, dear presenters, do you think that with regard to available EU funds, the involvement, informing and education of the general public and local businesses on national level is adequate in your respective country? And are these areas where significant improvement is needed? For example, in making the rationale behind certain funds clear to the public, or in making the whole process more transparent. So, dear speakers, anybody wants to answer this question about the significant improvement about the education of general public in the use of EU funds? Petko?
Yes, unfortunately, again, bad examples, and I would like to warn our colleagues, because in Bulgaria, quite a number of money from technical assistance or public publications, etc., were used from the government to feed media in order to get media on their side during the political scandals or political elections, rather than inform or educate people. So this is one of the very big weaknesses of Bulgarian information campaign on EU funds since very beginning. We had all reports by 2013, actually the first period. And as for education, I would say we have both good and bad example. There is a network of information centers in each of 28 regions of Bulgaria, and they are trying to make educational tours throughout the regional territories. The problem is, from my view, from my point of view, is that people are not, how to say, even the officers in this offices receive quite late important information, so they don't have enough time to transfer it to the potential beneficiaries first, and second, the potential beneficiaries by themselves are not interested very much to visit offices, to visit seminars or educational trainings. They actually need someone to go to them instead of spend their time. So this is something that could be improved as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Petko. I see Katalin also have a raised hand.
Yeah, thank you. So I would like to agree that awareness raising of the public is really important. For example, in Hungary, it's a common thing that these EU projects and any kind of donation of EU money is framed as a gift from the government very often. So yeah, that's no other ways to put it in words in another way. So people have the impression, simple people who don't read diverse news, they have the impression that all that money comes from the government, from the prime minister. Personally, yes, some people actually believe that. And or sometimes the mayor gives these, I'm just saying an example, in one of the villages, they gave some packages to the poor people, packages which contained, I think, food items and clothing items. And it was financed by an EU project. And the mayor gave it to the people as a donation from himself and his party. So it would be really important to correctly frame these European originated funds and to oblige the government or whoever, the municipalities, to have a communicational campaign as well next to the EU projects.
Thank you, Kati. That's a very interesting example. So let's see the results of our poll. And I'm sorry, instead of Latvia, I accidentally put Lithuania as an answer, but so far we see that Latvia had the best practices, and it seemed to our participant that in this country the EU funds are used in the most efficient way based on their presentation. And the last poll for today, which I also would like to share with our attendees, is related to the Repower EU goals. As you know, European Commission on 18th of May presented its package of Repower EU in order to fight with the increasing energy demand and dependency on energy dependency on Russian source. So regarding the role of EU funds in achieving Repower EU goals, which of the below items should be given the top priority? What is your opinion? Energy efficiency, sufficiency, reduction of demand, education and awareness raising, decentralization of energy systems and community energy, or transition to renewables? And while you are voting on the poll, I would like to tell you that all the examples we presented to you today are presented in our best practice database. So after this webinar, if you are interested, you can go on our website and find all of them there and read some more detailed information and find the links on all the resources and the amounts of funding and our policy recommendations. However, you can also contribute to our database, which we are planning to grow as much as possible. So if you go on our website, you can click on the button Add Best Practice, and you will see a simple registration there where you should put your name, email, the country of the project, thematic area, and then you should describe the project itself and also give some recommendations what from your point of view should be changed, or what is good on this project, or maybe this project is something as a mistake to avoid and the EU funding is totally misused. So we will be very happy to have your insights and to spread the word as much as possible. Let's see on the results of the poll. So according to our participants, the top priority of Repower EU should be transition to renewables. Very interesting. And without the further ado, I would like to thank all the participants in this webinar. Petko, I see you have a raised hand.
Yes, if possible, to make short comment on the last poll.
Of course.
Because we have a quite bad example with fighting between nature protection groups and groups who are promoting renewables due to the significant amount of Natura 2000 sites in Bulgaria. I would say that it's very important not to give a chance to open such a wars in other countries, also in Bulgaria, because this will undermine the whole Repower EU plan. And therefore, education and awareness raising should be done with priority, according to my view, and nature protection groups and promoters of renewables should sit together and discuss all these risks beforehand. Thank you.
Thank you, Petko. I totally agree with your comments, and I think all of our speakers do as well. On this positive note, I would like to thank all of you for participation and for our presenters for their valuable and interesting presentations. You will find the follow-up email where I will share with you the recording and all the presentations. Thank you very much and have a nice day.